Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us in the first episode of SRE Practitioner Connect. I was looking out for a long period of time. Who should we have as a guest to kickstart this whole episode? And I think it didn't take me a long time. I wanted to reach out to a friend whom I know from the service management world and probably dons a different hat today. So you would know her from who she is, but let me welcome Jayne Groll, the CEO of DevOps Institute, for our first episode of the SRE Practitioner Connect. Thanks, Jayne, for taking your time today. I know with your all busy schedule, I hope you're doing well and staying safe.
Hi, Suresh, and thank you so much. I'm so honored to be the first guest in this important series. And of course, you and I have known each other for quite a long time. And I think we've seen the growth of site reliability engineering, maybe from a little bit of a different lens in the beginning, but,
Right.
kind of watching this accelerated growth. And you've certainly, been leading the way in helping the community get educated. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here. If you don't mind, I just want to tell the audience a little bit about DevOps Institute.
Absolutely.
We are a professional association. We have certifications around site reliability engineering and other DevOps topics, but our mission is to advance the humans of DevOps. And Suresh, I know that's in your heart as well, that with all the technical advancements that we've made, we need to make sure that humans are skilled, that they're supported, that they're networking. So again, if you're listening and not a member of DevOps Institute, please go up to our website, become a member. We have multiple levels of membership, and I'm sure there's one that fits you as well. So Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that.
Excellent. So a couple of things on a mission towards and your journey towards this whole space of DevOps. I know that you've been a very big patron of site reliability engineering. So what do you think in the last 2 to 3 years? I know that our first SRE Foundation certification came back in 2020, early 2020. From there to what we are today, give us a bit of a snapshot, because you do and speak in a lot of these conferences on thought leadership. What has been your biggest appreciation on the site reliability engineering space? And because people only knew about Google before, and now we see a lot of organizations adopting to site reliability engineering. So what is your take around the whole journey that you have seen the industry embark, and where do you think the future is for site reliability engineers?
That's a great question. And you're right. I mean, in the last, say, 18 to 20 months, we've certainly seen an acceleration. But I think one of the most interesting parts of site reliability engineering is how it evolved. Right. So the DevOps community started evolving around 2010, 2011, heavy focus on continuous integration, continuous delivery, a lot of automation, right? And so when you looked at DevOps, it kind of went from the first line of code to deployment. And those of us that come from the service management space or the operational space kind of wanted to stand on the mountain and scream out, but now what, right? What happens when it goes into production, right, and somebody's actually using the code, and how do we support it? I think what's really interesting about SRE is that it didn't grow up as part of the DevOps community. Right. It actually kind of took a parallel path and accelerated faster in some ways, right, than DevOps, because thanks to our friends at Google, bringing in some operational practices that reflected a lot of the things we were promoting with DevOps, but from an operational perspective, really help complete the cycle. Right. So that after deployment, well, before deployment, but particularly after deployment, when systems have to be reliable, we're looking at resilience engineering, that it really was kind of the third piece of the agile DevOps SRE continuum. And so it was really exciting for me. I had a chance to see SRE at a very early SRE Con. I think it was like the second one. And it was a lot of Silicon Valley and a lot of tech companies, but there were enterprises there too. And the last few years, I think we've seen this rise of not only enterprises starting to build SRE teams, but humans starting to really focus on some of the SRE practices and principles, and creating new jobs, creating new career paths. Some of the SREs are former developers, some are operations folks. So just a really, really cool space.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I've seen this is there's a lot of job opportunities. I get a lot of conversations with people whom we train and coach them saying that we have so many positions open. So do you see that there is a huge opportunity from job opportunities in building more SRE capability within an organization?
I think there absolutely is. I mean, DevOps Institute, we run the annual upskilling report, and year over year, one of the biggest areas of growth we see is in site reliability engineering hiring and the skills in terms of how they've become much more essential. So again, depending on what your current role is, whether you're a software engineer, the classic definition is when operations, right? When a software engineer defines operations. So whether you're a developer, whether you're a build engineer, release manager, someone from service management, I think as we move into the digital landscape, SRE, the career growth, there is a challenge. And you know this, Suresh, and you've really been an evangelist for this, is that we want to make sure that we're not taking old roles, calling them site reliability engineers, and not equipping the individuals with not only the what is SRE or what are these practices, because it isn't a single set, but how do you do this, right? How do you do this? Tools are great, but really what's involved in becoming an SRE practitioner?
Yeah.
And I think there's just a huge need out there. And I'm really grateful that you are one of our partners that are really leading the charge on this.
And then coming on to that question around it, you did come up with the SRE Foundation course in 2020, and that has seen a very good growth across globally. But what was in your mind when DevOps Institute wanted to launch the SRE Practitioner course? Specifically because there was nothing available in the industry that talked about SRE practitioners. So give us a little bit of a roadmap around why that was important and how has been the feedback in the industry, because frankly, I've not seen a certification before called the SRE practitioner. So give us a memory down lane on the journey.
Well, it's really thanks to partners like you, where we had partners that are delivering SRE Foundation. We have candidates that have been going through the training, and they're really excited about, learning about, practices like observability or chaos engineering, and how do we bring new ways to bringing reliable systems, and they come out of it and they're really excited. And you came back to us and others came back to us and said, well, now what? Right? I've bought into the fact that SRE is great. I've read the Google books. I've, looked at other resources, but how do I extend my skilling learning, right? How do I become a continuous learner? How do I, as an individual or my organization, now take these practices and bring them to life? So that was the inspiration for creating the SRE Practitioner Certification. And of course, our partners like TaUB Solutions are the ones that are bringing it to the community and helping them get to the next level. What we found is you can't have a 101, right? Because people wanted 201.
Exactly.
And luckily, again, the cohort, and I know you were part of that, the cohort of individuals that contributed to creating this, I think created something really special.
And I really think that when Stephen TaUB came back and told us that, well, we haven't seen any program of this sort before, and coming in from the words of a person from Google meant a lot for us in kind of getting that feel-good factor that was worth the time and effort being spent around it. Now, as we started to look at some of these series, and I'm talking from real-time experiences, a lot of our clients are asking for, hey, we are getting a lot more interest from clients on SRE, but we do not know where to start. Can you help us do that? So we are seeing a lot more traction from managed service providers, product-based companies in asking us to help them. So I think there is a lot more people are now trying to figure it out. It's no longer a hype. it's more of a reality to check in. Do you see that as a trend in terms of practical implementations, that organizations are going beyond that curve, in the sense that, people getting used to the norms, but also trying to make some practical inroads to actual implementation?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we call it SRE Practitioner, because it has to be practical,
Right.
right? It has to be vendor agnostic, tool agnostic, but it also has to be actionable. And as horrible as the pandemic has been and what the global impact has been,
Right.
it has awakened organizations that when they had to move to a remote environment and their controls were less, but reliability, right, was going to be, whether they succeeded or not in a pandemic fueled world where everybody is acquiring services or using products remotely, really became a differentiator. You could not move into this digital landscape and not be reliable, because if
Right.
you weren't, they'd move on to somebody else. So I think it really emphasized, showcased how important reliability engineering is. And it's more than just red, green, and amber, right? Like in the old days of, I'm an old IT ops, right? If everything was green, you were happy, or if it were amber, maybe you'd, raise an alert. And if it was red, it was like stop everything. It's really taking a new dynamic into how do we know that our services are being consumed? How do we know that our services are delivering on their promise? And so I think the trend is only going to continue, because what's happened over the last, say 18 to 20 months just pushed us into the future, probably a few years. I mean, what do you see?
No, I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think we have doing a lot more consulting on SRE than ever before, because the whole world is trying to talk about, hey, how can you build in reliability and resilience across distributed systems? And that brings that interesting point to me, that DevOps Institute, beyond certification, also does something very unique in the form of skill up days. And one of the things I found it interesting, and I share it with my candidates and customers worldwide, is you can attend these sessions free, thanks to the vendors and sponsors who do a great job. But you bring in real world practitioners to talk about a specific topic. And just to tell, about September 23rd, we're having the observability as a topic. So what was the genesis of that skill up days? Because this is proving to be a lot more community-based effort. People are kind of thronging in large numbers. There are crowd chats. So tell us about that skill up days and how it is going to help practitioner to gain more deeper insight on a specific topic like SRE, like observability space.
Well, and thank you for that. So, the origins of Skill Up Days is kind of interesting, because it actually, we conceived it before the pandemic, not long before the pandemic. Actually, I always joke that I signed the contract for the virtual platform on February 25th, and March 10th, we went into quarantine. So I don't know, call it Providence if you want to. But we were looking at the event space, and we figured out there's a lot of really great events, right. But there are very few events that focus on a single topic. Right. So we take a day every month and we pick a trending topic, and all of the speakers, all of the sponsors are zeroed in on that topic for 6 to 8 hours. Right. And so observability is a great example. Yeah, there could be a conference that has a couple of sessions on observability, or, it's commingled with other topics. Skill Up Days are meant to skill you up on a single topic. And what's really interesting about Skill Up Days is that the sessions are awesome, but what really happens is in the chat lounge. Right. People chat with each other from all over the world in the chat lounge, and right. They chat with the speakers. And so, yeah, it is a virtual event, but it's just remarkable to me that we've done an SRE Skill Up Day, we've done a observability Skill Up Day, DevSecOps, CI/CD. So we don't have to kind of make it so big or so broad or multiple tracks. It's just a nice, comfortable way. We also are introducing something called Skill Books. I don't know if you've had a chance to participate in that, but we want to kind of surround, remember, advance the humans of DevOps. We want to surround the human with a lot of continuous learning opportunities. Right. So our certifications, absolutely, you want, but even let's go to what happens after SRE practitioner. Well, an SRE skill book is available with chapters written by different experts. Skill up days are on demand. It's surrounding the community, embracing the community, with the support again of people like you as such evangelists, Suresh, to be able to say, okay, we're not one and done, right? That's why SRE Foundation led to SRE Practitioner. We're not one and done. We are going to embrace you as a human, because we know that, things like site reliability engineering could really help you, your family, your company. I mean, it's, I know it sounds very like, kind of like woo woo, but it is true. I've been very blessed. I've had an amazing career, mostly because I had great support, and that's what we hope to do too. And I know you do also.
And it's also important that you bring in the concept of global ambassadors. So I'm pretty honored to be one of the first global ambassadors. But tell us about the mission that DevOps Institute is doing. No, I know that it's SRE Practitioner Talk, but I think you're doing a lot more towards spearheading the humans of DevOps. And I think there's a lot of useful resource that practitioners will gain from that momentum. So get a thought about what is the real reason of building global ambassadors, which means across regions. And thanks to Helen for spearheading that on your leadership. But what was the vision to build so much pool of global ambassadors, and what do they envision to achieve as part of Humans of DevOps?
And thank you for the opportunity to share that. Being based in the US, a lot of organizations like ours really focus on the region they're the most familiar with,
right,
regardless of where in the world you are. One of the things I learned very early with DevOps Institute, our first partners didn't come from the US. Our first partners came from Australia, from Switzerland, from India. And so right away, we learned that ours is a very, very global community. And other programs have ambassadors. And I'm really grateful to Helen Beal, because she's our chief ambassador. And I asked her to create an ambassador program, and it's exceeded everyone's wildest expectation. Largely because of Helen, but also for people like you and the other ambassadors who built a community where you connect with each other. You work on projects like SRE Practitioner really involved a lot of our ambassadors, and you're all volunteers, right? But again, you connect with each other. Some friendships have been formed. Certainly a lot of content has been created. And we feel that this is not sitting in an ivory tower, deciding how things should be. We get a lot of input and feedback and participation from our ambassadors. What I think is really cool is we literally have ambassadors from the remotest parts of the world. It is just fascinating. I mean, you're based in India, I'm based in Florida. We have ambassadors in Tunisia and Zimbabwe, and of course the US and in Australia and in Europe. And so we're also getting a world view of what's really happening out there. During the pandemic, really being able to understand how this was impacting has just been tremendous. But truthfully, that program would not be as strong as it was without the motivation, the passion of the individual ambassadors led by Helen. It's just a great program.
Absolutely. So last and final question for the day is about if an SRE is trying to get their hands dirty, they want to kind of get through this whole journey, get to more resources to keep them on a continuous learning path. How do you think DevOps Institute is going to help them in their journey to move forward? I know you did have something on the ad hoc. So can you give a little bit of understanding if an organization wants to assess its maturity to see where they are in the journey, so that we can see if we can have some practical toolkit to assess the maturity and move forward?
Yeah, I think that, for site reliability engineering, it's particularly important that individuals develop skills that are portable.
Right.
So, as we've seen in the DevOps space, there's some amazing tools and automation out there. And year over year, there are more that are introduced into this space, and existing ones mature their offerings, and that's great. But until you really kind of internalize what the key practices are, how to execute on those practices and principles, you need to be able to make sure that you're not trying to get to SRE purely because you've learned a tool,
Right.
right? The tool providers don't even want that from you because, again, when they, create a new version or they build a plugin with some other tool, they want you, of course, to, be very skilled at their offering, but you have to have portable skills.
Right.
And so for DevOps Institute, again, with the SRE Foundation, Practitioner, the Skill Up Days, the Skill Book, and now we've introduced an enterprise assessment known as the Assessment of DevOps Capabilities, ADOC. The opportunity to keep growing, to keep assessing, to make sure you're on a journey, that you're not on a race, I think is particularly important, because I think SRE is still, I don't even think we've hit the tipping point
Right.
of what SRE could do, what it's going to look like in the future, what tools are going to be introduced, how practices like error budgets or service level objectives are really going to be embraced and brought to life. And that's going to require the community, and it's going to require the ability to be assessed, right? Not once, right? Our assessment doesn't use numbers like I'm a 3, right? And no disrespect to other maturity frameworks, but people walk around like, well, I'm a 3. No, we want you to have some actionable assessments coming out of these capabilities. It is looking at teams.
Right.
Hint, hint, we are going to bring out an individual assessment later in the year, early next year, so people can assess themselves, but they also can, from an enterprise perspective, see if the investment they're making is delivering on returns and giving them the kind of capabilities that they need in order to be able to succeed. So hopefully it's holistic. But again, we're really excited about ADOC. We think the metrics are great. Again, built by our ambassadors. I mean, led by, individuals from DevOps Institute, but couldn't do it without the help of the community.
Excellent. And thanks so much, Jayne, for spending time. And I hope that, what would be your vision for this SRE Practitioner Connect? Because what we want to do is, we want to interview practitioners who are day in and day out living and breathing as an SRE, to bring their real world experience to share with the community. Because I believe that each and every one, as a global ambassador, has got something to contribute. And we did start off way back in a DevOps Practitioner Series, but we are now very, very passionate about this topic of SRE, now training over 1,000+ people last year alone on Foundation, and a lot more on practitioners. We think that there's a lot more appetite for people to grasp in. So what is your thought for us to make this initiative successful, to get more practitioners to be a part of the bandwagon?
So a year from now, when we come back, maybe it'll be less than a year, we will see a much wider adoption of SRE practitioner, particularly. Now, you have to go through SRE Foundation to get to SRE practitioner, right, like university, got to do 101 to 201. But I would love to see enterprises invest in the capabilities, so that we don't just change the name of a role, or we don't expect people to learn on their own. I think you want to be curious and you want to be passionate, but there is something about formal training. DevOps Institute, we don't do formal training, right? We rely on partners like TaUB Solutions to bring it to the local community. So I would love to see that type of an uptake, because the content, right? I mean, forget the commercial side. Yes, there is a commercial side, but the content is portable, it's actionable, it's enterprise driven. And I think that as we step into this new world order that none of us really quite know what it's going to look like, making sure there's a common understanding, a common vocabulary, and practical, right? That's practitioner, practical insight on how to be a site reliability engineer, right? The tools will come, the technology will come, but you have to really absorb the, how do I stand up my first error budget? Yeah. A year from now, I would love to see enterprises all around the world really embrace this as part of their moving into the digital age. I think it's a realistic expectation.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Jayne. And thanks for being with us and kickstarting this SRE Practitioner Series. I can't wait to see what is rolling up as we start to go through it. And probably a year's time, we should do a recap and see where we are for the first episode to X episode, which you have completed by the next 1 year's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here, Suresh.
So that's our end of the episode number 1. I look forward to seeing you in the episode 2 of the SRE Practitioner Connect. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.